It's Tuesday, January 31st, and the Marvel Snap patch has dropped, bringing with it balance changes, card series downgrades, data mines for lots of different goodies that we're going to cover in this video, as well as battle mode, a new way to play Marvel Snap with your friends or other folks online by sharing your lobby code. The big way battle mode differs from the traditional ranked ladder games that you played in Marvel Snap to date are you play multiple games against the same person, with each player starting with 10 health, and then the stakes of the game that you are playing are subtracted from the loser's remaining health total at the end of each game, and the first player to lose all 10 of the cubes that they've started with loses the battle mode match. One thing that is noteworthy about this game mode is that you do not gain back cubes when your opponent loses them, so you just go down, not back up. And starting in the 5th round, the stakes get doubled to begin with, meaning the games are played for a minimum of 2 cubes, which helps the game mode keep clipping along at a pretty good pace, even if neither player is pushing the stakes up themselves. To start with the updates in this patch, just a reminder on which cards are now more accessible to players at home. Moving from Series 5 to 4 are Bast, Black Panther, Shuri, Super Skrull, and Valkyrie. And moving from 4 to 3 are Absorbing Man, Luke Cage, She-Hulk, and Titania. If you're looking for deck ideas for any of these cards, you can find lots of them in the daily deck highlights that I post on this channel. And as far as Absorbing Man, She-Hulk, and Titania go, keep an eye for upcoming Ultimate deck guides here for lots of ways to utilize those cards regardless of what your collection size is in Marvel Snap. One of the most anticipated parts of this patch for many people, myself included, was definitely potential balance changes. And overall, I think the patch unfortunately came up a little bit short in this department. Leader did get a much needed rework though, now being a 6/7 with the on reveal effect of copying all cards your opponent played to the location to the right, but on your side. This means if you play leader at your leftmost location, you copy what your opponent played in the center. If you play your leader in the center location, you copy whatever your opponent played on the right. And if you play leader on the right, it's just a 7 stat 6 energy play. This means that your opponent can play around your copy of leader by deploying their cards to the left side location on the 6th and final turn. Overall, I think this seems like a very reasonable change to this card. It allows it to have some outplay maneuverability when you think your opponent might have access to it, and because leader explicitly cannot copy things that are going to be on the left side location, if you suspect your opponent is a leader deck, you can kind of sculpt your early turns in a way to mitigate leader's upside heading into that 6th and important final turn in the game. What will leader's power level be overall after this change? Well, it's kind of hard to say. This seems like it could potentially be reasonable, could potentially not be reasonable. I think it's definitely too early to make a judgment one way or another. If you've been playing with the changed leader, I would love to know in the comments down below what your experience has been with the card so far. Second and only other change in this patch as far as balance goes was actually a buff to a card that certainly needed one. Wolverine is now 2 energy with base 2 power, but whenever it gets destroyed or discarded, it gets replayed at a random location with +2 power. This means if you get Wolverine going in a destroy archetype, it can get to 4, 6, 8, or even 10 total power. I think this change is definitely a strict upgrade for Wolverine, but the question everybody's mind is going to be is, does this change do enough to put the destroy archetype on the map outside of combo centric versions like Deathwave? I played a little bit with this on stream and it definitely feels like a solid upgrade. Be sure to be watching this YouTube channel tomorrow morning for a deck highlight featuring a Wolverine destroy deck. One thing that I also like to praise in this change here is that they have changed Wolverine to replay this to a location, to regenerate it at a location for the sake of making text a little bit more clear. Cards like Wolverine and Jubilee and Hela said they played cards which often generated confusion for players because they didn't trigger on-play effects at a lot of given locations where they were played out to, and all 3 of those cards have had their wording changed slightly, so it no longer says that these are playing the cards out, simply that they're adding or resurrecting, or in Wolverine's case here, regenerating. Well, I was definitely a little bit disappointed by the total number of balance changes in this patch. Glenn Jones, principal game designer on Marvel Snap at Second Dinner, gave us some really excellent communication that makes me hopeful for the future. Glenn lets us know that starting with this patch, they no longer have to patch the game in order to do balance changes moving forward. Glenn also goes on to say that Surfer and Zabu have been overperforming since they locked in the changes to this patch a few weeks ago, and that we can expect balance changes to those cards in another week or so. Overall, I think making a smaller number of changes more frequently is probably an optimal way to balance things. If you change too many knobs at once, it can be difficult to determine exactly what is causing which output. I was only hopeful for more changes in this patch because it had been so long since our last meaningful balance patch. But if they're going to regularly make a small number of changes moving forward, I think small number of changes at each iteration is probably an ideal place to be. Obviously, that is purely speculation. We're going to have to wait and see exactly how they approach balancing the game with their new technology that allows them to balance without patching, but I'm hopeful. They've been good at a lot of things they've done so far, and hopefully this will be another excellent tool in the second dinner toolbox for making Marvel Snap great. Up next, this patch also had a lot of wonderful information packed into the data that was extracted from it by data miners. As a reminder, something we already knew is that Modak is going to be our next upcoming season pass card starting on February 6th. 5 energy, 8 power, discard the entirety of your hand when it comes into play, with the other season pass variants here being Wasp as well as Ant-Man. A newly added bit of information in today's patch, however, is that Nimrod is confirmed as the March season pass card. 5 energy, 5 power. When Nimrod is destroyed, create copies of it at each other location. The other variant cards for Nimrod season pass being Wolverine as well as Sentinel. Something else to note is that in your own Marvel Snap client, you can see the silhouettes of cards you have yet to see or even be added to your collection, and we see a number of upcoming releases here in my personal client. Shadow King was released today, for example, and then we have MODOK as well as Nimrod here confirmed to be the upcoming season pass cards. The rest of these releases, let's go ahead and run through what they do really quick and provide a little bit of speculation on when we can expect to see them in game. Stature is a hero, to my understanding, is related to the Ant-Man and Wasp part of the Marvel Universe, so I would wager we will see her as a February release. 5 energy, 7 power, but costs only 1 if your opponent discarded a card from their hand this game. This is a tech card against discard decks like MODAK, the upcoming season pass card, as well as something that you can enable yourself by playing something like Moon Knight or Black Bolt. Ghost is likely to be a February release since they are also related to the Ant-Man part of the Marvel Universe. Really game-warping ongoing effect here with your cards are always revealed last. This makes effects like Shang-Chi and Enchantress a lot more powerful in interactive, disruptive decks, and I frankly expect Ghost to see quite a bit of play if it releases with this current ability and stat line. Kang is going to be the primary enemy in the upcoming Ant-Man movie, so safe assumption that this is going to be a February release now at this point as well. 5 energy, 0 power. On reveal, look at what your opponent did and then restart the turn without Kang. So effect that is similar-ish to Daredevil, but with a little bit different dynamic. Not only can you deploy Kang on the 6th turn of the game, making that turn get replayed, but most noteworthy here is that your opponent doesn't have to make the same decisions on turn 6 as they did in the previous game. They don't have to play their cards in the same locations. They don't even have to play the same cards out at all. This seems like a card that's going to be powerful and provide a lot of leveling experiences between two players trying to figure out where their opponent is at exactly and if they're going to be able to maneuver around what they're intending to do. Looking forward to the March releases. Nimrod, Wolverine, and Sentinel are all X-Men related cards, so I think it's safe to assume that Kitty Pryde is going to be in their season as a Series 5 release as well. 1 energy, 2 power card. You can return this to your hand to gain +1 power. This is a sweet effect with the Collector. It's powerful with something like Angela. The Beast Bounce deck that I highlighted recently is one of my favorite decks to play in Marvel Snap, and I am hoping that Kitty Pryde can give it a little bit of a power level boost that it desperately could use. Master Mold is a really interesting design. 2 energy, 2 power. On reveal, add 2 Sentinels to your opponent's hand. Remember, Marvel Snap has a firm hand size limit of 7 cards, so under the right circumstances, Master Mold is actually going to cut your opponent off a draw or 2. And this serves as another way to add additional cards to your opponent's hand, which means Ronin could potentially see more play if you have Master Mold to guarantee that your Ronin is going to have a larger stat line. The final X-Men related card likely to be coming during the March season is the Negasonic Teenage Warhead. 3 energy, 2 power. When any card is played here, destroy this card and that card. I'd be interested to see if this is playable. It probably depends on the deck you're playing into. Obviously, if your opponent has a lot of cheap things, they can easily play out into the Teenage Warhead's path. She's not going to be very effective. But if your opponent is looking to play more expensive cards on average, Teenage Warhead could effectively lock up a path that your opponent's not going to be able to play into. Not only did the Marvel Snap patch today bring with it a bunch of new features, it also rolled out without a hitch, which is nice to see, having experienced a lot of other games and digital card games where patch day is an unmitigated disaster with some frequency. While we didn't get the raw number of balance changes I was hoping to see, I am incredibly optimistic for the future with them setting themselves up to be able to make balance changes moving forward without needing a patch, which hopefully means that we will get those changes on the regular. As far as upcoming card releases go, I am very ready to get some season pass cards that seem neat to build around and interesting to play with, like Nimrod and Modak, but aren't utterly cracked like Zabu and Silver Surfer were. The upcoming Direct to Series 5 card releases also seem interesting and potentially powerful in the right shell, but not overtly overbearing like things like Shuri and Darkhawk have been in the past. Finally, it is worth noting that there are also data mines for upcoming bundles that'll be coming to the Marvel Snapshot in February, and spoilers, collector's tokens are going to be a part of those bundles purchasable for gold. Keep an eye out here for a video breaking down the potential value in those bundles and whether or not they are worth your consideration here in the not too distant future. I didn't want to include it in this particular video because, as you can see, it is already quite long with all of the other information that there was to digest and break down from this patch. As always, I'd like to just give the folks that made it all the way to the end of a video like this a shout out. I appreciate you engaging with my content and giving me some watch time. Be sure, if you did enjoy any of my musings today, to snap that like button to help it reach more people. If you don't happen to be subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. You probably enjoyed it if you made it all the way to the end, and I post Marvel Snap game news updates like this, as well as deck highlights 7 days a week, and I'd love to see you back again. We'll see you back real soon later today for a breakdown of those bundles that folks are always interested in learning more about, I know.